Hi Melanie, thank you so much for joining this video session. It's really good to see you on the call, and I know that we've spoken and we've worked together over the last couple of years. We've got some exciting projects coming up, but for people who don't know you, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your involvement in the visitor economy?
Yes, well, over 20 years now in the visitor economy. I have worked in all aspects of the visitor economy at a destination level, whether that's leisure tourism, conferencing, in quite a number of destinations. My last full-time employed job was as chief executive of a tourist board up in the north of England, Visit County Durham. But the last 5 years I've spent working with a whole range of clients and customers, both in this country and in Europe. And I focus really, I suppose, on product development, planning for the future, supporting destination organisations and businesses to understand their customers, develop brands, the full range really. We tend to be all-rounders in tourism, don't we?
We do. And the project that we've been working on is one of the Discover England funded projects, which we refer to as DEF. And the project that I'd love to talk to you about today is the England Originals project. And in a minute, I'll ask you just to talk us through it. But as a concept, it was about developing new experiences, packaging them up, and then distributing them. So it would be really interesting just to understand, where did England Originals come from? What was the group that sat behind it and sort of pushed it forward over the last couple of years?
The group is called England's Historic Cities, and I'm very privileged to be the chair of it. I have chaired that group since 2013, actually, so a long time now. It's mainly a benchmarking self-help group of destinations with similar challenges and similar opportunities. But one of the challenges that the group have as historic destinations is attracting younger visitors to their offer. Heritage isn't necessarily an obvious pull for people who are in the younger demographic, say under 40. So the group has long held an ambition to tackle this challenge and to try and broaden their visitor profile to embrace more younger people. Because we've got some wonderful experiences and wonderful stories to tell. And it's a shame that we don't, attract more people. I think for some people, history and heritage can be a bit like a school lesson. And that, that's not really what you want when you go on your holidays or your short breaks. You don't want a lesson. So England Originals came out of that shared ambition to broaden the profile of visitors to historic cities and see what we needed to do really in order to achieve that ambition. And hence England Originals was born. And we're very lucky that we bid to the Discover England Fund, which was provided by DCMS, the government department where tourism sits, administered by Visit England. And we successfully bid for quite a substantial investment to help us meet this challenge. So that's where England Originals comes from.
Fantastic. And it was, as well as the DMO group, you were also able to pull in some of the sort of, private sector around the National Trust, England Heritage.
Absolutely. Well, these projects where you're securing public investment always require a partnership behind them. You can't really do it without a partnership. So we had the core of the partnership, which was England's Historic Cities, and that's 13 cities right the way across the country.
Which Lincoln is one of them.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Lincoln was a founding member of Historic Cities, so it's been in the partnership for a very long time. The partnership stretches from Carlisle to Canterbury, from Bath to Durham, and everything in between. I always describe it as the Premier League of historic destinations in the country. So Lincoln's in very good company, and it is one of the Premier League destinations for history and heritage. But wonderful cathedral, wonderful castle, wonderful stories around those. So it's a fantastic addition. Well, not an addition, founding member of the group. Yes, so partnership's always essential, but not just partnership between destinations, partnership partnership between destinations and the businesses that operate in those destinations, but equally some of those national collaborators who are guardians of our heritage product. Yeah. So we engaged early on with English Heritage, also the National Trust, and beyond our destination partnership into the City of London. Now, that might seem quite strange, but actually the City of London feels a little overlooked in the scheme of things in London. And of course, it's a perfect heritage fit for the Historic Cities group because it has so much history and heritage, and it is a city in its own right, so outside of the metropolis. So we also embrace Worcester and Truro, who aren't part of our group, but they are emerging historic destinations, and you know, we're a generous bunch. We reach out and we work with people who can benefit from being part of the group, but also who are going to add to the offer that we all have collectively.
And I think that's a really good point, actually. It's very much about understanding what the end user wants and building a package, and actually if those other cities fit into that kind of package, that's where the collaboration comes. And if you can just, you know, just talk us through, so what is England Originals? You know, what is
it comprise? England Originals is a number of things. First and foremost, it's a mechanism to bring together 16 destinations under what we call one brand umbrella. And it's really important to do that. Bear in mind that England Originals is focused originally on the international market, so, and particularly the long haul market. So that's inbound tourism from destinations a long way away from us, who know very little about what there is to offer outside of London and Edinburgh in the UK. And really, you need a mechanism to bring to attention these regional historic destinations and make them make sense, because they don't make sense. Much of America doesn't make sense to me. And so why should we make sense to Americans, which is our target market? So it's a mechanism to bring us all together. It's a brand umbrella. But the work that we've been doing over 5 years now is to bring forward a product offer that is going to appeal to a particular demographic, going back to our ambition to broaden our demographics, our visitor profiles, to include younger people. So it was about product development. It's about teasing out what experiences, what properties we've got, what businesses, what attractions, what the food and drink offer is, what the touring offer is, and bringing it together in such a way that it makes sense to a long haul visitor, and particularly those intermediaries in the long haul market who sell to the customer. So that is tour operators, travel counsellors, all of those intermediaries who are very, very important in America in advising people on where to go and how to spend their leisure money. So that's it. So it's a collection of product on many different levels, destination level, business level, under a brand umbrella, that is about raising awareness of what we've got to offer, making it easy to understand, and making it easy to navigate. So I suppose that in a nutshell is what England Originals is.
And there's some itineraries that like people can actually buy into, isn't it? So Lincoln is part of one of those itineraries, but you did a whole suite of them, and it's almost like the products come together in those itineraries in a package that makes sense and they can book. So the actual itineraries are the experiences, but it's all of the businesses that then feed into that itinerary.
Yes, it's about making it understandable and easy to navigate. Now, if you're coming to Europe from America, you may be choosing to go to Paris, London, and Milan. If you're an American, you've only got a short amount of holiday a year. So if that is the case, if American visitors are choosing to come to Europe for their precious 2 weeks holiday a year, they've got to have a really good reason, haven't they, to get out of the main centres that they already know and they're already attracted to. And we have to be realistic. We are out of the centre, you know, historic cities. We are not necessarily top of the pick list. So a way of actually explaining and also making the cities easy to visit is to organise them into itineraries. And I'm sure everyone recognises that Americans like to do a lot when they go away. They like to cram their days with lots of experiences along the way. So what we did was we took the destinations and clustered them into threes that are easily doable in a trip, sort of, about sort of.
So geography-wise.
Yeah, 4 to 7 days. And particularly by train, because Americans don't really like driving in this country. So Lincoln is part of the Treasure Trove itinerary, along with York and Durham. And it is relatively easy to travel between those 3 destinations on a fantastic itinerary that takes, as I say, as long as you want really, but it's doable in 4 days, with an overnight in each destination, starting off in the City of London, which is where most of the American visitors arrive, Heathrow. What the itinerary does is it highlights the businesses in those destinations that they might enjoy. So that's a combination of accommodation, it's heritage attractions, it's experiences that aren't heritage based, that sort of going to be more interesting to a millennial audience, a younger demographic. So that could be anything. That could be sort of paddle boarding, that could be cocktail making, it could be all sorts of things. They'll want to do the heritage, they'll want to do the castles, the cathedrals, and steep themselves in those experiences. But they want a little bit more than that out of their time when they're cramming their days full of stuff to do. So we make it easy for them to travel by rail, and part of England Originals is the new England Rail Pass, Brit Rail Pass, which you can get, and then that you can hop on and hop off trains over a period of time. But it's also where to stay, where to eat, what to visit, and how to enjoy yourselves. So Lincoln is part of the Treasure Trove tour. We have 4 others: Thinkers and Writers, Time Travellers, The Great Western Wonders, and Wall to Wall. So all of the cities in the group are clustered.
Yeah.
And the idea is that somebody chooses an itinerary and follows it.
Fantastic. And you've mentioned a few points there around sort of understanding the audience that was very targeted around. And I know in sort of the papers that you've circulated, you sort of mentioned the profile of cultural adventurers. And I think sometimes because Lincoln is a historic city, we kind of have a perception about what a cultural adventurer is. But actually, what's been really enlightening to us as a team at Visit Lincoln is actually understanding how interesting these sort of themed itineraries are to perhaps the youngest audience around 25 to 39 years old, which is what England Original is kind of packaged for. So just moving on to that, the other bit that was really interesting on this project is actually how technology was used in interpreting the stories and the animation. Again, to just sort of talk us through how understanding your audience and then applying the product, but in a technical way, has kind of unlocked lots of other opportunities that maybe historic cities didn't realise they had.
Yes, I think it all begins with that interpretation of heritage product, and it goes back to that comment I made about it can't be a history lesson, it has to be fun.
Yeah.
One of the ways to make it fun was we discovered through focus group research with this target segment, these millennials, these 25 to 39-year-olds in the US, what would interest them and how they like what is it about history and heritage that would attract them to come to our cities? One of the things is about storytelling. Now, we all tell stories, but do we tell them in the right way? And do we alight upon the right stories? That was the questions we asked. And it became really apparent that the kinds of stories they're really interested in is about people and events. They're not really interested in the history of the fabric of buildings.
Yeah.
not really. They want to know what it means, really, you know, and they want it to resonate through, you know, people's stories and, you know, this event happened here, you can tread in the footsteps of, you know, all of those kinds of triggers, if you like. So that's one thing. So it's about how you approach interpretation of history and heritage, but secondly, how you deliver it and communicate it. And that's where the technology came in. And we wanted to do something that maybe people wouldn't expect a set of historic destinations to do. So we worked very closely with Jonathan Foyle, who's a historian who I know loves Lincoln and loves Lincoln Cathedral, to actually uncover these stories and make sure we weren't propagating urban myths. And then, so they're real stories. And then we worked with another company called Hex Digital to create these and communicate them through an app, but also through augmented reality. And this was a real challenge because to do augmented reality, this is about overlaying information and adding information. It's not about virtual reality where you put your headset on and you have an out-of-body experience, you know, just sitting in your front room. This is about going into places and having another layer of information and experiences through using your smartphone. So we developed this through the England Originals app, which anybody can download and use, and then creating the stories and the information in such a way that they could walk around Lincoln Cathedral or, you know, Greenwich Mean Time or Lancaster Castle or, you know, all sorts of different locations using their smartphone, literally sort of holding it up, yeah, and a trigger point sort of brings up a narrative told by Jonathan Foyle or a piece of information or a set of images or something of that nature, which just gives that little bit of extra experience that you won't get. And it was very different content to the normal visitor leaflet that they might have picked up as they walked into the property. So, you know, so we did that, and we did some virtual portals, which are very, very whizzy. It's literally where you step through a virtual portal and see your surroundings through different eyes, and those are amazing experiences, actually. So we did some really far out stuff, and it was great.
And these are all things that, you know, people who are running businesses in and around Lincolnshire, you know, they can tell their visitors about this. You know, when you go to the cathedral, have this experience, and it just brings that other layer, really. Yeah. So I suppose a lot of work has gone on. We've been hit by coronavirus. It obviously paused and changed activity. We had to be agile. But pre-COVID, what was the sort of impact that England Originals was having?
Well, the way we chose to use all of the new interpretation content technology that we had uncovered and created was to work with the travel trade.
Yeah.
And that's because they're so important to the US consumer. The US consumer leans very heavily on tour operators and travel counsellors to help them plan and book and then actually travel. So we started to develop relationships with DMCs, which are destination management companies. There are a number in this country who service tour operators in the States. So that a tour operator will come to a DMC and say, you know, we've got a customer, they want to do X, Y, and Z. Can you help organise it, please? Can you find the accommodation? Can you find the attractions? Can you book the tour guide? Can you sort out the, you know, all of that kind of stuff? So we worked with two in particular, and then they sold effectively England Originals to their tour operator companies, some of the very largest. There's one called GCS, which has multiple brands in the US. And one in particular, Great Value Vacations, is a consumer-facing offer, and England Originals was inserted into that offer, and GCS ran campaigns to consumers on our behalf to sell us to the US consumer. We can't possibly do that ourselves. It's a vast country with an enormous population. You would need, I don't know, the riches of Croesus to actually make an impact in that market. So the best way to do it is to work through intermediaries who are already established, already have a client base, and are looking for new products that they can promote to them. But we also did quite a lot of media work. So, we used the journalists and encouraged them to come over, experience one of our tours. There's definitely people who went on the Treasure Trove tour, and, bloggers, influencers, but the kind of journalists that actually millennials will listen to.
Yeah.
So we're not talking about, pages in the New York Times, because frankly, most millennials get their information from bloggers, influencers and social media. So there's no point in, even doing that sort of more traditional approach. And we had a lot of success with that. So that's how we did it. I think we were just about to launch when the pandemic hit. Even so, in 2019, we did actually sell, we know we can trace that we sold about $35,000 of holidays as a result of England Originals. There's probably a lot more that we haven't got our hands on because everybody suddenly battened down the hatches and, you couldn't actually get to speak to some of the people you need to speak to. But we have made a lot of progress, and product development is actually a very long game. Marketing is the very end of the process. And I think had the pandemic not hit, we would have seen a much larger value of bookings because we were just gearing up and the impact was just about to hit it. And 2020 was our big year of first year of bookings. And what happened?
Well, so since the pandemic hit, we've obviously had to pivot a lot as organisations, businesses, and obviously projects too. And that's exactly what you've done with England Originals. You've pivoted it post-COVID. So just tell us a little bit about how you've done that and what impact you think it will have. Year 5 of England Originals and Visit England have supported England Originals and other projects to focus on the domestic market to help them recover. So that has required a slightly different approach. The intelligence is that a UK millennial is very unlikely to follow a 4 to 7 day itinerary taking in 3 destinations. They're just not going to do that. So this is much more about single city visits. So it's promoting the 14 cities because Truro and Worcester are not part of this phase. It's about promoting them to their more local and in-region audiences. And also doing a sort of an Amazon approach, I suppose. You like Durham, therefore you might like England, might like Lincoln. So it's about taking a slightly different approach, also about developing the product offer. The product offer for a US millennial will be very heritage focused with all those stories and experiences that I described earlier. But for a UK millennial, they know some of that. They live with it day to day. They probably walk past it most days on their way to work or, on a family day out. So you need to actually build up the product offer to a greater extent and broaden it even further. And that's what we've been doing. So we've got some fabulous new experiences, many in Lincoln and in the environs of Lincoln as well. So not just city centre, but broader than the city centre. So, about half an hour out from each city, taking in some of the rural products, because many of these people will be in their own cars. Therefore, they can actually get out into the surrounding areas. So that's been interesting. So more experiences, further afield. And then the way to do that is we've boosted our social media activity as England Originals to highlight the different cities. So it's sort of more integrated into each city's recovery plan rather than sitting to one side of it. It's there to help and support what each city is doing to recover and also their hinterland to recover. So
it's a slightly different approach. And the other element to it, which is quite interesting, is a long-held ambition of England's historic cities to cross-promote.
Yeah.
Now that's really hard, I think, because you know, if you're in a destination and you're a business operating in a destination, quite understandably, you want your destination organisation to focus on you and supporting you, particularly in these times. However, it's been proven that by helping each other and promoting other places, you can boost your own profile. Because you become a more of a trusted source of information, you know, and people are more interested in the broader offer than just the single city offer. So we are developing and implementing a cross-marketing plan where each of the cities will not only promote themselves, but will promote their fellow cities to customers. Now that's a trial and we'll see how it goes. And hopefully it will prove some really beneficial, and it will be a long-term activity that England's historic cities can undertake. So that's another element to it. But we have maintained those trade relationships for the long term. So we have reignited those, and that's going really well. So that when US travellers can visit again, we haven't lost all of that 4 years development work. And we will see those US visitors coming into the UK and getting out of London and coming on the Treasure Trove tour, hopefully.
Fantastic. Well, it's been so interesting talking to you about it, Melanie. Thank you so much. And I think, you know, some key takeaways for me is how important partnership working, not only in destination, but outside of destination is, you know, the insight into the audience profile and augmented reality, stories and people being, you know, sort of like some of the key pulls. And I suppose our job now as Visit Lincoln is to share all this, all the detail about the Lincoln activity back with our partners and our businesses. But I just want to say thank you so much for sort of explaining the bigger picture to us. Absolutely fascinating, and we look forward to working with you more in the future. So thank you for your time, and we hope to have you on again later in the year.
Thanks very much. Lovely.
Thank you.
Bye.